Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Homes for All virtual rally. The title and theme for our rally today is Response, Recovery, and Resilience. My name is Pastor Sue Kesterman, and I'm privileged to serve as one of the co-chairs for the Homes for All Coalition. I'm joined by my co-chair, Chad Adams, who is the CEO of the Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership. I also serve as the CEO for Churches United for the Homeless in Moorhead. I'm very pleased to be able to welcome you today. Just a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, to let you know that the chat feature is enabled. And so if you have questions or comments, if you would put them in the chat feature, people can use the Q&A feature on chat. So ASL interpreting will be provided. ASL interpreters are titled interpreter, and you can click on more by their name and pin them in order to view that. Also, we do have captioning available to us today. If you wish to use the captioning feature, click on CC or more and select View Subtitles. If you want to see the transcript on the side of your screen, select View Full Transcript under CC or More. So I'm pleased to begin us today with the sharing of an impactful story. We're joined via video by Douglas.
Hello, my name is Douglas Pyle, and I was adopted at 6 months old, and I moved to Minnesota about 15 years ago. And along the way, through my journeys, I did come across substance abuse, which led me to lose my job and eventually lose my housing. But with the support of the shelter system here in Minneapolis, I was able to get into higher grounds, and I was there for a few months before the pandemic hit. And luckily, we were able to get into hotel rooms to help with the overcrowding, so nobody got infected with the virus. So in while I was there, it's a safe place to stay. I don't worry about anybody taking your stuff or come up on you, late at night or whatever. It's a safe place in the hotel. So, and eventually, got the support of the housing program to get me into sober housing at the Alliance here in Minneapolis, and it's been great. I mean, they help you out with, rent if you need subsidized rent, stuff like that. But it's just nice paying rent again. I never was the one for handouts. I've always worked for my stuff, and during being homeless, I got a lot of handouts, but I didn't really like doing it, but I had to at the time. So, but another thing, like with paying rent, we had to also pay for our linens, food costs a lot. Razors, shampoo, toilet paper, everything costs a lot of money that people don't realize how much extra money that stuff takes. So with the housing support, I'm hoping that you guys can help out a little bit more to help, ease the burden of having to have everything on our shoulders right out of homelessness and addiction. It wouldn't be so much stress on us if we could get a little bit more support from you guys. And that'd be much appreciated. And I would be there, but thankfully I got a job about a couple weeks ago with the Downtown Improvement District here in Minneapolis, and that's why I can't join you guys to talk to you in person. But I appreciate y'all's vote and your support and giving us more money so we can provide for ourselves a little bit better. Thank you.
I'm going to chime in here a second. This is Matt with the Coalition for the Homeless. I'm trying to do the tech stuff. So if you're a panelist, make sure you are muted, as I'm getting some input that there is an echo. And apologies if there was some random boxes on your screen. That was my bad. So go for it, Pastor Sue.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you for chiming in. We are now joined by additional impact stories. We're joined next by a Duluth resident who has been served by CHUM in Duluth.
Due to staying safe from COVID. Staying in a hotel has helped me in many different ways. I would first like to mention when the AIDS epidemic hit, I had a dear friend who had AIDS, and they were not able, or hotels were not being discussed at that time to stay in a hotel, and someone killed him because he had AIDS. I am Afro-American from the baby boomer generation, a senior citizen with a heart attack history. And in other words, with the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm a high profile person. The hotel protects me and keeps me safe. And above all, it allows me to focus on my goals, which is housing and getting a part-time job. I would also like to mention that with the hotel, I'm free, or let's just say 99% free of catching germs. 0 people who have stayed in CHUM's hotel have received have not received the COVID virus. Nursing homes across America, it's a out of control situation with the deaths, and the people from my generation, the baby boomers, are dying like flies because they're finding that the workers are carrying the disease because they don't know that the person they're helping has the pandemic, and then they go treat someone else in the nursing home that has the disease. So once again, I go back to the hotel. It's been a lifesaver for me. If I were not in a hotel, I probably would be dead, because you have a lot of people that didn't want to wear masks. A lot of people, since I am high profile, Afro-American and old, it's, well, she probably has COVID, and that would be very negative for me. So again, I say the hotel has saved my life, and I can honestly say to you that I do believe that if I were not in the hotel, knowing all of my circumstances, I would be dead today. I am able to work on my goals thanks to CHUM. They have a highly knowledgeable, supportive staff. I'm able to work on getting housing, and I look forward to eventually, within 30 to 40 more days, moving into my own place and working as a child care helper. So even though I have a negative profile, it will turn into something very positive.
We're so grateful to that person from Duluth for sharing their story via audio with us. Now it's my privilege to welcome Carly.
Hi, my name is Carly Hargis. I am actually a self-advocate and I live in Winona, Minnesota. My housing journey started in 2009 when I moved out of my parents' house and I was 20. And so we were looking for different places to stay, kind of a different situation from my brother and sister. I was born with a rare metabolic disorder. So I guess you could say that I was a problem child of the family, but really not. So we were kind of looking at different places, and then we ended up finding housing access services through the ARC. And I was actually the first person they actually moved with that program for the state of Minnesota. I was able to get a Section 8 voucher and also get on the caddy waiver. So the county in I lived in Iceland, Minnesota at this time, Caledonia area. And the county helped me get on food stamps and cash assistance. And then the Section 8 voucher helped pay rent. So I was able to get rent through and live on my own independently. In 2010, I was able to get Social Security, so that helped even more. So I lived in Iceland for about 10 years, and then I needed a change because I was in a sheltered workshop setting for job-wise and wasn't making enough money that way. And so ended up moving to Winona, which gave me a more socialization with the community, and I was able to use city transportation instead of relying on my parents or neighbors. So my mom has she states I have blossomed because I'm doing things more independently and socialization all by myself. And then, so I found a job I absolutely loved and things were going great. And then COVID hit. And when I first got to Winona, I got involved with Cardinal Services. So they were helping me. But once COVID hit, everything shut down. So I had to go back and live with my parents for 3 to 4 months. Cardinal started back up again. And unfortunately, I did lose my job altogether. But thank goodness for the Section 8 voucher and Social Security for staying up and running. Because I think without them, I would be dead in the water and having to be living back with my parents. So they've been helping with rent, and currently I am volunteering in different programs with self-advocacy and telling my story and getting my story out there, trying to make a difference in people's lives. And so I get paid some stipends through that. And so that's been helping. I am on unemployment. So in little ways, it's just like I'm making ends meet, but still able to keep my apartment and services going. And you got to kind of take one day at a time and take each thing day by day and deal with the circumstances that come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Carly, for your willingness to share your story and the impact that the Homes for All agenda will have on your life and the life of so many others as we move through the end of this pandemic and into the future together as Minnesotans. Now it's time to do some polls, and so we'll turn to that. Our first poll is this question: what part of the state are you from? If you would be so good as to click on one of those regions, we'll see who all is on this Zoom webinar. All right, so here are our poll results. I'm hoping that people can see what's on the screen as I can. Looks like the majority of folks who are with us just now are from Hennepin County, but we have good representation from across Greater Minnesota and Ramsey County as well. Now we have a couple of questions related to housing facts. The first question is, how many households in Minnesota are experiencing cost burden, that is paying more than 30% of their income towards housing? And our second poll or quiz is, in Minnesota, what percent of renter households are paying more than 50% of their income towards housing? Matt, are you going to show the results?
Yeah, and there's actually 4 questions on it. So folks are still answering them. So once I see people stop, I'll share the results.
All right, thank you. Do you need me to read the other 2 questions or not until the screen shows them?
Yeah, you can read the question number 3 and 4.
All right, question number 3 is, how many hours a week must a minimum wage employee work to afford a median priced 1-bedroom apartment? And then our 4th question is, of Minnesota's 87 counties, how many do not have enough shelter beds?
All right, and it looks like most people have answered, so I'm going to share the results.
So here are the correct answers to the questions. The first is that 554,272 households in Minnesota are experiencing cost burden, that is paying more than 30% of their income towards housing. And the answer to question 2 is that 22% of all renter households are paying more than 50% of their income. It will take 65 hours of work in a week at minimum wage to afford a medium priced 1-bedroom apartment. And of Minnesota's 87 counties, 80 do not have enough shelter beds. The responses to these questions, or the answers to these questions, just goes to show how vital our work together is in the state of Minnesota to ensure that all Minnesotans have access to shelter and stable housing. I'm pleased now to welcome Lucy Zanders, who is the Executive Director of Teresa Living Center.
Good morning, everyone. I'm just here to share with you just some work that's being done across the state of Minnesota in terms of racial equity work. And just to give you a little bit of history on the racial equity work that's being done by the entire state, I'm sure most of us have, as providers or even as people experiencing homelessness, have at some point maybe participated in the Wilder study, where it's taken every 4 years, where they give statistics on how people are living, and also the race and the racial makeup of people experiencing homelessness. So about 2 years ago, the state of Minnesota took on a project called SPARK. And what SPARK stands for is Supportive Partnerships for Anti-Racist Communities. And it was an initiative taken on after realizing that people of color historically have a housing instability rate of 7 to 8 times higher than the population in general in Minnesota. And not only are they experiencing homelessness at a higher rate, but the homeless response system historically and currently always produces disproportionately a number of people who are poor, or who are the homeless, who we find out that the homeless who are housed, or that they also experience a higher rate of housing instability, and that instability oftentimes falls higher. The outcomes are higher for African American and American Indian populations. So a couple of years ago, the state of Minnesota took on an initiative called SPARK. It was funded by the Polat Foundation, and we did it through work that was really collaborative with C4 Innovations. They partnered with Minnesota, and the many different counties to help really study the impact of racial inequity within our state. And that really initiative was kind of called together by MESH, the Minnesota Engagement on Shelter and Housing team. They called together people from many different counties in the state of Minnesota. And the goals of that collaborative was to really to increase the capacity of communities to understand and respond to racial inequities in homelessness. Also, one of the goals of this collaborative was to assist communities in developing structural changes and objectives, and also to implement effective strategies just to reduce the number of people of color experiencing homelessness. This initiative was taken on by counties from central Minnesota, Mankato and Blue Earth, Ramsey County, and the suburban metro area continuum. And I want to say that Hennepin County did their own study a little bit ahead of these 4 areas. So what we did as a collaborative, we came up with goals and really trying to analyze the big area of engagement that each county wanted to do. And the C4 innovations helped us move towards coming up with some kind of data analysis, action planning, ways we could implement and evaluate, but also come up with a plan that was going to be sustainable for our state of Minnesota. And just so that you know, for many of the regions, what we came up with was what we called headlines for our region. Central Minnesota declared that they wanted the governor to declare that race would no longer impact housing opportunities. The Mankato and Blue Earth areas said that homeless systems should wear an equity lens, and that was going to be their headline. For Ramsey County, the county in which I was engaged with, we took on the mantra of saying Ramsey County's Spark team unpacks patchwork policy efforts to improve racial equity in the homeless service system. And then the SMAC team said that homeless racial inequities will be eliminated in 5 of the metro counties. So each of the areas took on a big task in order to uncover and identify different inequities in which they found in their system. And we did all of this through COVID, as a matter of fact. We started this initiative in September of 2019. We were able to meet together as a group, a collaborative of all the different counties for 3 times we did. And then COVID hit. And so we had to start doing much of our work via Zoom or other meetings, but each one of the regions took on the project as being something near and dear, and that they knew that they wanted to make an impact on in terms of homelessness in the state of Minnesota. As we fast forwarded to the end of the funding for the initiative, every one of the groups that met made a determination that this racial equity work should be a priority for our state. And each of the groups remained engaged so much that we now are no longer under the cover of C4 Innovations. MESH is still doing the pull together work for the collaborative. And we've come up with a new acronyms to define our work. And the acronyms actually say the word REAP. It's Racial Equity Accountability Project. And through that, it allows the 4 different regions that had started the work on racial equity to continue the work, as well as bringing in other counties throughout the state of Minnesota. So with the Racial Equity Accountability Project, some of the goals that we want to continue to work on and to seek is to really increase the capacity of communities to make sure that they understand and respond to racial inequities in the homeless system. and also to assist communities in developing and implementing structural changes and objectives, and also to identify mechanisms to help us track progress and ensure that actions lead to the reduction of disparities within our homeless response system. So I just want to encourage many of the people from throughout the regions in Minnesota, when you hear the word REAP now, Racial Equity Accountability Project, that is something that you really want to grab hold to, because we want to make impact in the homeless response system for our state of Minnesota. Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you so much.
Pastor Sue, I'm actually, so there's Matt again trying to do the tech stuff, but I'm actually going to stop sharing and we're going to have somebody else start screen sharing so I can spotlight the live speakers so people will be able to see ASL and the person currently speaking. Apologize for not having that going before now, but hopefully moving forward, we'll be able to have that. So I'll stop talking now and I'll spotlight each speaker as they go.
Thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate you breaking in to provide some clarity. So now we are joined by our policy co-chairs to provide a legislative overview and updates. And thank you again to Lucy for sharing with us. Our policy co-chairs are Zach Eichten, Michael Dahl, and Carrie Johnson.
Hey folks, this is Zach Eichten, one of the policy co-chairs. I'm also the director of public policy at the Minnesota Coalition for the Homeless. And I just got to say up front, thank you to everyone who is here, who is going to take action with us. We literally cannot do this work without the support of all of our advocates. And throughout all this, what we're doing in the legislative overview here, what we're doing this year and the wins we've had in the past, without strong support from folks like you, we would not have housing as high of a priority as it is this session. This is the first session where we've had housing as its own separate committee in both the House and the Senate, and that is directly as a result of the strong advocacy of the Homes for All Coalition, which is supported by all of you. So thank you to everyone who is doing that. I'm here to talk to you today about the human services piece of the budget. And where we are at as we go into the last 2 weeks of session here. So you want to go to the next slide for me. What we are doing here is, I'm not sure who's running the slides, but I need the next one up. Thank you. The first thing I want to talk to you about is the emergency services program. And for those of you who are, in the shelter space, you might know what this is, but for those of you who don't, the emergency services program is the state's response to homelessness. And what it is doing is it allows for operations dollars, just like basic operation of a shelter, but it also expands and does things like mental health care, behavioral health care, substance abuse treatment, childcare, transportation, and a whole bunch of other really great stuff. But the current budget for that is only $844,000 a year. So this year, because of our advocacy with Homes for All in the House budget version of this human services bill, they're proposing increasing that to $9 million per year. And obviously, we're very supportive of that large increase. We know that as we continue forward in the post-COVID world, that we need to have a strong safety net for people who need it. And going through the emergency services program is the best, most flexible way of doing that so that local communities can come up with local solutions. Next, as you heard earlier, 80 of our 87 counties do not have either any shelter beds or enough shelter beds in their community. And that's a huge problem. So together with the Homes for All Coalition, we have been advocating for $2.5 million of cash for shelter capital. This is just the cash piece. You're going to hear about bonding later, but essentially what this is it's a check written out to providers who need to fix stairwells, buy a new roof, get some new windows to make sure that spaces are safe and accessible. And then also it would allow for folks to use that money to acquire a new space, a new building that they could use for shelter, or even build a new shelter. And we're really supportive of this ask. We know that we need shelter statewide in order to get a handle on our homelessness crisis. So $2.5 million a year in shelter capital cash is in the House bill. Also in the House bill for Human Services is $1 million per year in long-term homeless supportive services. So for those of you who are more familiar, it's funds that will expand the coordinated response efforts so that individuals who have been homeless long-term are able to get connected to those targeted services that get folks into stable housing quicker. So having a real increase in this fund is going to make a large difference for getting folks who do fit that long-term homeless description the resources they need to maintain and get into housing. And then finally, in the Senate bill is our housing supports ask. So for those of you who are familiar with housing supports, it is the state's, it used to be known as group residential housing, but not everybody lives in a group home. So they changed the name to housing supports. And housing support helps folks who are at risk of homelessness or housing instability stay in stable housing. But unfortunately, the rate that we pay for this service is not even close to what it's needed. So it's actually below the rate for the median rent in Minnesota. So we need to increase that rate so that we can continue to provide this service and make sure that folks who are at risk of homelessness or housing instability, they can actually stay in their housing. In addition, in the housing supports program, right now, regardless of reason, folks cannot be gone from their unit more than 18 days at a time or more than 60 days in a calendar year. But we know that folks who seek medical treatment sometimes need to be in a long-term care facility longer than that. So what we're doing is proposing a waiver for that absence policy so that folks seeking medical treatment can go and get their medical treatment without worrying about if they're still going to have housing when they come back. So that's our proposal for Health and Human Services. We're spread out in both the House and Senate positions, and we're really supportive of these provisions. As we continue through conference committee, hope you can join us in advocating for these provisions to make it into that final report. But with that, I will turn it over to Michael.
Hello, everyone. If we can move to the next slide. My name is Michael Dahl, and I'm the Public Policy Director at Homeline and one of the policy team co-chairs for Homes for All. And I want to thank everybody for work that you've done on tenant protections this legislative session. We're seeing tremendous progress on issues being brought up in a lot of different settings because of your work. More than 625,000 Minnesota households are renters, making up for 29% of the population. And we want to make sure that people feel that they have the rights, the resources, and information that they need to be good tenants, but also to have great relationships with their landlords and have address issues that need to be addressed on a timely basis. Homes for All, along with our Homes for All, calls for the following policy changes to ensure that renter households have those rights, resources, and information that they need. And that leads into the legislative agenda that deals with tenant protections as part of Homes for All. One thing we're asking for is that, first of all, that renters have notice from their landlords before an eviction is filed against them in court. So that gives them time to fix the problem if they can, or find a way to find different housing that is more attuned to their ability to pay. So we're asking for a 14-day pre-eviction notice from landlords before an eviction is filed in court. Now, this is really important because an eviction action immediately appears on someone's record and bars them from much housing that's available in the state. On expungement reforms, we're asking, first of all, that nothing appear on a tenant's record until they've actually been heard in court. and a judgment has been taken against them. Right now, again, the simple accusation by a landlord that that something has gone wrong appears on someone's record, and we think that they deserve their day in court before that happens. We would also, among many other things, expunge eviction from someone's record after 3 years. Third on our agenda is the source of income protections, and this is really basic, that tenants should not be discriminated against if they use some sort of a public assistance program or subsidy to help pay their rent. They should be able to use that no matter where they go to be able to afford rent for a unit that works for them. We're asking for a number of things regarding lease fairness, and basically, I'll just say that it's that fees that are for non-optional services should just be wrapped into the cost of rent, so that someone knows there's transparency and understanding of what they're paying for in their rent. We believe that tenants are entitled to privacy, so that they know when their landlord is going to be entering their apartment unit with at least 24 hours notice, and a couple of other things as well. For infirmity, we're saying that tenants, if they have been told they need to move from their current housing for health reasons, that they be held to 2 months of paying rent, but not the full term of their lease, because many times tenants may have to choose between paying their current rent or getting the care that they need. And so we don't want this to be a barrier to them. And then lastly, we're asking for a statewide heat code to be made available throughout the state at 68 degrees as a minimum temperature from October 1st through April 30th. And that also that we add to a number of emergency repairs to what is an existing set of emergency repairs, so that things like a broken refrigerator, a broken air conditioner, or non-working elevators are seen as an emergency to address and get this into our state law. And with your help, we can make these things happen, because the legislature currently has provisions moving forward in both in the House right now to protect these to provide these protections. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. If we could go to the next slide, that'd be great. And so, hello, everyone. My name is Carrie Johnson. I'm a Senior Policy Advisor at the Metropolitan Consortium of Community Developers, and I also serve as one of the policy co-chairs for the Homes for All Coalition. And so, as Zach mentioned, you know, we have these housing committees now, which is really great because we've been able to elevate housing as an issue. And I think one of the most amazing things that we have going this session is everything from our legislative agenda is kind of in the works, plus more things that have previously been on our agenda in past years. And so I'm not necessarily going to walk through everything, but I do encourage you to utilize the Q&A as well. I've seen some questions in there. The policy co-chairs will try to answer those for you. But do want to kind of highlight some of the programs that have been on our agenda this past year. So the Bridges Housing Voucher is a transitional voucher that helps people with serious mental illness kind of bridge their time from as like a transitional housing until they can get a housing voucher. Sometimes one of the most important things that we need to do, though, is pass policies to make sure that vouchers are effective. As Michael mentioned, we have the source of income protections that we're advocating for. We've also been working on the workforce homeownership program, and we have lots of homeownership organizations kind of in the mix as well. Minnesota is one of the worst states with our racial equity, our racial homeownership disparity gap. And what we need to do is to invest more in homeownership opportunities for our Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. And so we're hoping to see major increases both in the ongoing base budget as well as through the tax bill. One of the great things that we've had going these past couple of years is our work has expanded to multiple committees, including the tax committee. We have another program that we've been advocating for a few years, which is the Lead Safe Homes program, to get lead out of homes abate the lead, to prevent serious illness and disability in children, that are living in these homes. I think Sue Watlow Phillips from MICA, they've been leading on this. And one thing that they always say is, if we can just prevent 10 children from getting lead poisoning, it will pay for itself over the years. We also are advocating for NOAA preservation. We are losing more affordable homes than we can build, or faster than we can build them. We're advocating for the Shelter Provider Task Force. This would be groundbreaking. This program was led by folks that have previously experienced or lived in shelters. It's really kind of amazing to see this program hopefully get passed. We also are advocating for some 4D tax classification rate changes, and then of course bonding, which is our kind of bread and butter. The bonding request right now that's kind of in the House has $100 million for general obligation bonds to preserve public housing. The deferred maintenance on public housing right now is over $350 million. So $100 million investment towards preserving our public housing would go a long way. The rest of it is in housing infrastructure bonds, just different types of bonds. And that would go towards new development, preservation of affordable housing for many of our nonprofit members and some of our other developers, as well as shelter capital and some additional funding for NOAA preservation. And then you can see on the other side of the screen other programs that are kind of in the mix as well. If you could go to the next screen, that'd be great. All right, and so I just want to take a second to thank everybody. 2020 was an extremely hard year as we maneuvered our way through adapting to the pandemic. We, experienced a huge racial reckoning in our state, and the legislature is constantly trying to think about what we need to do to advance racial equity. And we're going to continue that work for years and years to come until we achieve it. But I also want to take a second to acknowledge the fact that 2020, we also saw some really great things. We had record-breaking advocacy numbers. So thank you to all of you that continued to show up, to call, email your legislators, to participate in our rallies and events, that showed up to testify, wrote letters. Thank you. This advocacy helped thousands of Minnesotans stay safe, whether it was through additional shelter funding to help people stay in separate hotel spaces, like you heard earlier from folks that were able to access that, and also utilizing the eviction moratorium to help many thousands of people stay stable in their homes. We also secured the largest bonding investment in Minnesota history last year, which is amazing. And so as much as 2020 was a rough year, there was a lot to go through. There were some also really great things. And so I know you're all exhausted. I know we are. And I know you're just hoping for kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. But we just are continuing to ask you to show up for a little bit longer for your advocacy. We can't thank you enough. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Zach and Michael and Carrie, for providing those updates to the legislative overview, and especially for highlighting the wins from 2020. 2020 was a very difficult year for everyone across the state and across the nation. And it's good to remember that there were things that were wins throughout the year. Could we see the next slide, Matt? It's my privilege now to welcome Tyra, who will speak about the Shelter Resident Bill of Rights. Tyra is coming to us from Street Voices of Change.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tyra, and I am from Street Voices of Change. I am an original member and also a facilitator of the original location, which would be at Central Lutheran of Minneapolis. I want to note that they created a space for current homeless and formerly homeless to have conversations about conditions and concerns at shelter. As we have seen previously, where there were people who were outside and park encampments who shared our concerns about why they did not want to be at shelter. Over the course of the 4 years that we have been together, over the course of the 4 years that we have been together, as we shared our concerns about the conditions and concerns of shelter life, we came up with a solution, and that was the Shelter Residents Bill of Rights. We got a major response from Hennepin County, county commissioners. David Hewitt from the Office of Homelessness became quite involved. And we also collaborated with shelters to share those concerns and have seen strides in changes made at shelters. I'm proud to say after 4 years, with the help of Homes for All Task Force here and with Align, the churches that support Street Voices of Change, that we are now in legislation. There is a bill to set up a task force, and that we are now headed towards appropriation funding. The bill is so important. We realized that we couldn't do this work alone. I realized I couldn't do this work alone. And then Street Voices realized they couldn't do this work alone. And we realized that we needed to bring all the parties to the table, whether it be urban or suburban, rural, and greater outstate, to bring all those people to the table. Thank you so much for recognizing Spark, because Spark said one time at a meeting, he said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so I am so proud to be at so many tables to bring those concerns of homelessness together. I want to thank Representative Gomez, who was on the ground when we were at Powderhorn Park. That's where I'm born and raised. That's my neighborhood. And to see my friends who were outside was disheartening. But Representative Gomez showed up in the middle of the night and had conversations with folks. She is a great representative. I also want to thank Representative Hausman. I want to thank Representative Howard and Representative Keeler. And all of those who I may have failed to mention to support the Shelter Residents Bill of Rights Task Force, so that we can set a standard of care on a shelter level and create a coordinated entry to people to get to the right housing for their situation. I also want to thank C4 Innovations and Built for Zero, because they include us as well. And I also want to send a special thanks to Pastor Melissa, who is not here with us. My phone is acting up right now, and that all of the support that we have had for Street Voices of Change along the way. I so appreciate all of you, and I appreciate the time today. And with that, I will pass.
Thank you so much, Tyra. We are deeply appreciative of your willingness to share on the importance of the Shelter Residents Bill of Rights and the work that's being done there. We are now joined by Stacy, who's with the Village of Hope in Bemidji, to talk about emergency shelter.
I'm muted. There we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Stacy. So I grew up a foster child, in and out of the system, turned 18, was heavy on drugs, a lot of stuff, I don't know. Well, 2020 hit and I just had my baby. We ended up homeless, and I was in an abusive relationship. We ended up in Minneapolis, and we were in like shelter, the hotel shelter down there. And once a spot opened for us at a homeless shelter, I was too scared because I had a newborn baby and there was COVID there reported at the shelter. So my ex talked me into moving to Georgia. Well, in Georgia, he tried to kill me, and so I had to flee with 3 of my kids. We flew back to Bemidji, Minnesota, and I got on a waiting list for Village of Hope, and we gotten in there. By the time we were in Village of Hope, I was just dealing with addiction, being a single mom, dealing with the traumas of abuse. And Village of Hope had my back. They helped me get back to where I needed to be. Becoming homeless was like probably very scary. I was just a year and a half clean, and dealing with everything, that addiction and everything had to bring. When I got into Village of Hope, we ended up finding housing at the apartment I'm at, and I applied for Village of Hope. I've been on the Youth Action Board since 2017, and I really overcame a lot of things. And I thought finally I was ready to, and I got a job at Village of Hope. With all these programs, it changed my life. I was scared I was going to go back to using, which I did for a little bit there. And I was able to get resources and get back on my feet. And I'm now a single mom, still dealing with a lot of stuff, but I have the support system. Without these supports, there's no way a mom like me would make it. Without the supports, there's no way we would be able to get off of drugs, get off of everything that we're dealing with. So with trauma, it's an easy coping skill. With trauma, hiding and numbing is amazing. But when you have supports like I do, the Village of Hope has been my backbone. They have been there completely for me so that I could get my goals met. I'm thinking about college now. I have social work interns telling me how my story impacted their life and changed their life. Another thing that I think is important factor is that a lot of people think that we need shelter and money in the cities, which is very true. But up here as well, we have it very bad too, but it's just not as recognized. We have one emergency shelter for people to go to, and it's so hard turning down others like me because there's just not space. There's not enough. We have one shelter in multiple counties up here. We have a long waiting list, and I'm one of the grateful ones that was able to get in there. But what if I wasn't? You know what I mean? I think emergency shelter is very important. It's a key start. It's where I first asked for help. It was where I first was able to be honest that I was in a domestic relationship, where I was able to be honest and get the healing that, he tried to kill me. I might have died. If I didn't have those services, I probably wouldn't be here today. And I'm just grateful for everybody's work, the resilience I have in my support system. Without these fundings, without these grants, without people advocating, I don't know where I would be. And yeah, with that, I'll pass.
Thank you so much, Stacy, for sharing your story and reminding us of the importance of emergency shelter, that there is enough, that it's safe, and that it's accessible to all who are in need of it. And thank you too for sharing your resilience and bringing us hope on this day. We're welcomed now by Calandra, who is a tenant connected with Homeline, and she's going to talk about the importance of tenant protections. Thank you for joining us, Calandra.
Hi, really quick. Good morning, all. My name is Calandra Chandler, and I currently reside at 4750 Central Avenue Northeast in Columbia Heights. I am a 47-year-old woman and have been a renter all of my adult life. In the past, I've had some pretty good experiences with landlords, but in recent years, I've had some troubles. Rents keep going up, but the conditions keep getting worse. All the while, bad landlords only seem interested in turning the highest profit instead of taking care of their tenants. Last winter, I was displaced from my apartment in New Brighton when a large company purchased my building and evicted everyone. They wanted to flip the units and charge higher rent. which they have accomplished. We got together and organized to file a class action against the new owners as well as the city. As of this spring, the case was settled in our favor. I had to fight the eviction they filed against me in court and still have to work to get it expunged. Still, I was forced to find another place to live, and unfortunately, the only other affordable option has turned out to be a nightmare. My current landlord in Hilltop doesn't make basic repairs. I haven't had proper heat all winter, as well as me and my neighbors are dealing with faulty plumbing, electrical, broken windows, broken security doors, but still required to pay rent that he continuously goes up on. And no one is holding him accountable because Hilltop has no rental license program. Now my neighbors and I are organizing to take collective legal action and force our landlord to make the repairs necessary for our health and safety. As a tenant, I have had many rules I've had to follow, or else I face the consequence of losing my housing. Bad landlords, on the other hand, know what they're doing is wrong, but they get away with it, get away with tenant abuses all the time. I don't think that's fair. Safe and affordable housing affects all areas of my life. I struggle with chronic health conditions and provide for a large family. This pandemic has only made stable housing more important for my well-being. This year, I know thousands of renters like myself are relying on the state to protect our housing stability and our health. I am grateful to have worked with Homeline and the Homes for All Coalition to push for rental policy changes we so desperately need. If those changes were already in place, it would have helped me tremendously in the situations I've been placed in. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Kalandra, for sharing with us your experience and reminding us of the importance of tenant protections. Now we will be joined by Irene, who is a resident at Beacon Hill Apartments in Grand Rapids, and she's going to visit with us about the importance of housing through bonding.
I excuse me. I was living in an apartment in Marble, Minnesota. I'm in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, Itasca County. In 2016, our apartments were built, Beacon Hill. They were made to support the mental health community as well as low income. I was the first person they moved in. And I love it here. There is staff available to handle issues. My side of the apartment building is housing support, which was GRH. So I have my own apartment, yet I have support from staff as to if I have a mental health issue, if they take care of my medications, and remind me to take my medications. If I forget, they'll knock on my door, come take your meds. And then our food is provided for us, laundry is provided for us, cleaning supplies are provided for us. And I really can't live on my own. I need that support. So yeah, we're unique in the respect that we're kind of like a foster environment, yet we have our own apartment there that is independent. And I don't know what else to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Irene, and sharing your story with us. We are now joined by Natividad Seefeld, who is the president of Park Plaza Cooperative in Fridley, and she's going to talk with us of her experience and about the importance of home ownership.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for putting this program on today and for inviting me today to be a speaker. I grew up in a poor family of 6 children and 2 parents, 1 working father. And so it was a struggle to wonder where our next house was going to be or the food on our table. At one point, we even lived in the car with 4 children and 2 parents, probably for about 3 or 4 months. So I have experienced what it's like to be in a vehicle on the beaches of California. I currently am in a manufactured home community. In 1998, I got a divorce and had to find some place to live. And I was able to find a home for sale in the community. At that time, it had a private owner. And I was told I could come in and look at the house, but I couldn't bring my partner. I had 15 minutes to look at it and say yes or no. So I did that. Fast forward in 2010, our owner then gave us a letter saying he was going to sell and wanted to give us the opportunity to purchase. So the residents gathered together, we had a vote, and in 2011, on February 15th, we became a co-op. So we are currently a cooperative and it's member brand, and it is also pretty much rent controlled because we have say on how our rent is. We've married the land to our homes. We'll never be displaced. Our community will never be sold. So everyone owns their home and still rents their space, but that money goes to the cooperative to continue to operate on a day-to-day basis. We have about 84 families currently. And we also have done $1 million worth of infrastructure, water, sewer, streets, lights, fire hydrants, you name it, we've done it. We have recently put in a storm shelter community center, which cost $624,000 with a lot of help from a lot of people. We got that job done as well. We currently have Libraries Without Borders, and we did Man a Market for quite some time. And then when the pandemic hit, that had to be moved to the church just right up the street. So we still have the availability of getting food for our residents. Everybody helps each other, babysits each other's children, we cook, we do events, and everything is sponsored by us ourselves. We do a lot of our own mowing. We do have some vendors that are contracted out for other items. And so we went from being owned by an owner who never did any repairs, did not like lesbians or gays. So they were always trying to force me out, but I stayed, and I've been there since 1998. So what is that, 22 years now, I think. And I have been the current president for 11 years. And so I just want to say, if you have the opportunity to be able to purchase your community in manufactured housing anywhere in the state, please take that opportunity because it will guarantee you safety, community, and a healthier way to live. Right now, we're working on the opportunity to purchase bill. Everybody has to talk about it. Everybody needs to get it passed because then owners will give you the opportunity to purchase. There's only 2 things on there that they really need to do. And recently, a community woke up to a letter on their doors saying they were sold in the middle of the night. Nobody knew about it. We have over 990 communities here, about 180,000 residents. So imagine if we all turned co-op and kept our houses in our communities. We didn't have to move. Nobody was going to kick you out, and it was never going to sell. It's the right thing to do if you are able to do that. And that's about it. I'm pretty happy, and I'm hopefully everybody else is too. So thank you again for inviting me. That's my quick story.
Thank you so much, Natividad, for joining us. So the Homes for All Coalition is made up of more than 270 endorsing organizations from across the state. And we advocate for everything from shelter to home ownership, everything across the continuum. And the success of the coalition over time is reflected in the legislative wins from 2020 and for our policy agenda items for 2021, and the really wonderful engagement that we have enjoyed with the legislature and our endorsing organizations. where we live really does impact everything else. So now it's time for you to take action. Let's send our emails right now to remind our legislators of the importance of moving forward with the agenda items that we have identified. You'll see on your screen the action alert that there are 2 weeks left in the session, and we need your help to continue to prioritize housing, homelessness, and tenant protection.
And this is Matt again. So I'm going to actually, in the chat room, I just sent the link. But the reason we are screen sharing this right now is because we just want to show you how simple it is, right? So Rhonda is screen sharing. So she just click here to continue. And you can see it's a really brief message right now. But what our hope is, you can personalize it. So just really briefly in a few sentences, you don't have to get too deep, but make sure you personalize why you care about this issue. If you want to talk about something specific that the policy team went over, that's fine, but there's no need. Just make sure you're talking about what really matters to you and your community. So we'll give it a couple minutes for everybody to do that, and then we will continue with the program.
Thank you so much, Matt and Rhonda. And I want to encourage everyone to click on that link and go ahead and personalize your message and continue to advocate for everything from shelter to home ownership.
And thanks to those that shout out to Barbara and Noah for saying that they finished the action alert. And Linda also is asking, once people are done, if you could just put in the chat room, just saying, hey, I finished, or whatever. It's just fun to see all the energy going through the chat room.
I'm seeing a number of folks are putting in there that they have completed the call to action. And I've seen a couple of folks say that they have shared it with their whole org. I would encourage everyone to do the same. We need to get the word out, and we need to continue to be powerful advocates across Minnesota.
And I see somebody in the chat was saying that they forwarded it on to other people. That is also a great idea. And we will be sending a post email with the action alert as well to be able to forward that around.
Thank you so much. We are now joined by Paul Williams, who is the president and CEO of Project for Pride and Living. And Paul is going to talk with us about racial equity and housing.
Thanks, Sue, and good to see everyone. Normally, I know this is a big gathering, and I'm sorry we can't all be together today, but good to see you all virtually. I'm Paul Williams, and born and raised in the heart of the historic Rondo Summit U neighborhood over in St. Paul. And in my own background, experienced, in my broader family, really difficult issues around homelessness and particularly mental illness. And I bring that to my work. For those of you who know me, that's an important piece of who I am and why I do what I do at PPL. We have over 1,600 units of affordable housing. About 3,500 folks live with us every night. Vast majority of those are folks of color struggling with a wide range of issues. Combination of supportive housing, and I'm so happy to hear so many people talk about the importance of supportive housing, housing with services for folks really with very low incomes and kind of multiple challenges that they're working for. We also have a wide range of workforce housing for that family of four at 50 or 60% of median income, many of whom are always kind of precariously housed. So I just wanted to touch a little bit, and I'm so grateful to hear so many of the speakers share their own stories, because housing really is central to our lives. And I think this last year, certainly with the pandemic, that has just come full blossom. Turns out housing is healthcare, right? I heard the resident from up in Duluth talk about, right, housing is healthcare. If you don't have stable housing, you are at risk of catching this virus and potentially dying. But housing, stable housing is equivalent now to healthcare. Housing is education for those across the income spectrum, educating their kids now from home. Stable housing is critical to the education of our children. Housing is employment and training. Here at PPL, we know and we have seen the shift that many of the folks who we train around jobs and job skills, now all of that is being done from home. So stable housing is critical to kind of training, retraining, learning for both our young people and for all of us as adults. Housing is childcare. We've known that for a long time. Critical to have stable housing to be able to take care of your children. Housing is economic development. It's critical to job growth and workforce. We saw a couple years ago in the Governor's Housing Task Force in Greater Minnesota how critical stable housing and available affordable housing is to expansion of industries in places like Rochester, Thief River Falls, Wilmer, Austin, town after town where we saw the connection between job growth, economic expansion, and stable, available, affordable housing, critical as an economic development tool. So we had a housing crisis before we hit that pandemic. We know that. The low vacancy rates, the transition of those NOAA units has been really a big challenge for a long time. Again, that has only kind of deepened as this last year has gone along. In that task force process, we found that we need 300,000 new housing units in Minnesota by 2030, right? And I think the number was we needed about an additional 10,000 units of housing each year of affordable housing. Right now, collectively, we produce about 3,000 units a year. We need an additional 10,000 units just to keep pace with the demand that we currently have. So these resources are critical. And we know, again, the issues that several people have talked about the importance of equity and the impact on BIPOC communities of the housing shortage. We know that equity is central to this work. And again, I would posit to you that equity is actually, it's a superior growth model, right? If we eliminate disparities, right, we know that we will gain something in the neighborhood of $30 billion in additional GDP, right? In the region, I think, just in the Twin Cities region, we knew that from the last Metropolitan Council plan. So equity and eliminating disparities is just good economics. It's good for the community. It's good for people. It's good for all of us in terms of being a strong competitive region. So I love the list, and you've heard from a lot of folks about the different strategies that and proposals that are part of the Homes for All platform. I just want to talk about the importance of those bonding dollars. Again, if we hope to even remotely meet that challenge of finding an additional funding, an additional 10,000 units of affordable housing. We absolutely need to have that bonding funding is critical to make that happen. The importance of services, and again, Stacy talked about and said, if I didn't have those services, I wouldn't be here today. So that the housing supports dollars, increasing that housing base rate by $100 a month. There's a proposal in there to actually hold off on a service rate cut, but those funding dollars, the GRH dollars that have now renamed, are absolutely critical to funding the services. Some of us in the affordable housing industry sometimes talk about it's almost easier to build the building than it is to pay for the services for the folks who live in those buildings. And the service side of this is absolutely critical. It is what helps folks, as you heard today, really move to self-sufficiency. There's a proposal in there. You heard Kari talk about the 4D real estate cut and basically pulling property taxes down for affordable housing. That is a very real challenge. Again, it gets to the ability of, especially for nonprofits, for any owner of affordable housing, to pay again for the operations of the housing. It's increasingly difficult to operate this housing once you even get it built. And so that is critical to increasing that supply. So at PPL alone, that'll have a multi-million-dollar impact on the bottom line and is critical to our ability to reinvest in the very properties that we own and to keep rents as low as possible. So just another word on the equity work at PPL here. We've been on a multi-year journey to infuse racial equity and to become a more equitable organization. And one of the things that I've been talking about out in kind of the community development world and in the housing world is that how we build matters as much as what we build. And in particular, coming off of the social unrest, how we rebuild matters as much as what we rebuild. And what I mean by that is we need to be much more about building capacity in BIPOC communities, that where we walk alongside community in this development activity, where we look for organizations of color to partner, where we look for different vendors and construction entities and so forth, right? Where we build capacity in community. Loved the way that Tyra talked about voice, right? Voice is another piece of this, centering community voice in the work, right? If you're not at the table, she said, you're on the menu. I think that's beautifully stated. We need communities to be at the table driving what in fact gets built and how it integrates and connects to community. And then I think the whole policy arena and making voice heard in the policy arena is absolutely critical. 85–90% of the folks who live with us are folks of color. Their journey around inequity, their journey around discrimination every day of the week is very real. And our ability as an organization to walk alongside that community, majority of our staff are folks of color as well, but our ability to walk that journey ourselves, I think is critical to our ability to build new affordable housing. And so thankful to hear the work being done by Spark and the statewide work. I think is really excited. So just a huge thank you to the coalition, to our legislative partners and everybody who's put so much into this work. Really appreciate everything you've done. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Paul. We're grateful to you joining us today. And it's now my privilege to turn back to our policy co-chairs to talk through questions and answers.
This is Michael Dahl. I'm again the Public Policy Director at Homeline and a policy co-chair with Carrie and Zach. First of all, I want to see is Senator Utke available on this call right now?
No, hi Michael, this is Zach. I have some unfortunate news. Both Senator Utke and Representative Gomez are not going to be able to join us today. Both of them are still in the Health and Human Services conference committee that is going from 9 to noon. They're going over a lot of spreadsheets. So unfortunate that they couldn't come here and do something fun instead, but they have actual work to do.
And I have the unfortunate news that, well, there's hope. There's a little bit of hope that by the time we're done, maybe some quick words from Representative Herr and Representative Howard, but they are also in conference committee. And so use this time to ask questions of us. Use this time to send your email if you have not yet done that. Wait a second, we got Representative Herr, who apparently can join us right now. Tell me as soon as we see if she's available. And I'm texting.
Good news.
And I'm going.
And Michael, she just joined, so I'm going to spotlight her video.
Okay.
So now you can see her.
All right, Representative Herr, thank you so much.
I'm so glad to be on. So am I on with everybody right now?
You're on with everybody, and you are the legislator that we have. So thank you.
I'm so glad to be here, and I can't see myself on your video, and so I just want to make sure that you guys can all see me here. And I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me to be on. I can't tell you how important the work for Homes for All is to me. I know that Michael's heard my story 1,000 times, but I think about the fact that like housing has been at the center of my life. And when I came to this country as a refugee, you know, over 40 years ago, I always often tell people that I think that people always think that my accomplishments have been really exceptional and the things that I've done and my education level. And I always tell everyone that like, I'm no different than every person who came from, you know, a low income background. And the only difference between me and everybody else was that I always had stable housing. And I attribute what I've been able to do because my parents were able to purchase a home the first year they immigrated to America. And, you know, and because that created housing security, it wasn't just the housing, but it was the fact that my parents were able to build assets in that house. And then they were able to use those assets wherever we moved to build, to be able to buy their next home. And that even at times where my family relied on public assistance, we were never housing insecure, which meant that I always had a place to do homework, that my father always had an address so that he could get a job, that we always had a place to operate from, that I went to the dentist every 6 months, even as a refugee new to this country, that we were able to get access to healthcare. And that was because we didn't have to worry about where we were going to live, and that our health was better because we had a place to live. And so, you know, this issue of housing and housing security and housing stability and homelessness and affordable housing is so, so important to me, which is why I fight so hard to ensure that we protect our tenants, to ensure that we have legislation that allows people to buy homes, those who want to be able to be in a home, to ensure that when our builders are building and they want to have, you know, tax breaks in order for them to buy affordable units, who are they really making those units affordable to? And so I am just super excited. The fact that I got to work so closely for the Homes for All Coalition and with Michael and everyone who's been leading this work, you all have made me greatly prepared for the bills that I carried. I mean, you know, as we talked about in housing this year, it has been a long time since the legislature has considered significant changes to the tenant landlord laws. And this year, the House did its job. You know, we brought a number of updates to the conference committee to better protect tenants. And Minnesota is currently behind the times with the other states doing much more to advance tenant rights. But tenants deserve, you know, there are things that are just basic, right? I think it's so important for tenants that they deserve notice before their landlords file evictions against them in court. Our tenants shouldn't be discriminated against because they pay part of their rent with a subsidy. And tenants deserve fair treatment in court. They should expect warm homes and livable conditions and privacy and so, so much more. I mean, to me, these are such basic things. And yet we today are still trying to fight to ensure that tenants have basic rights. And so, you know, and I just think that regarding all of the legislation Homes for All has on its agenda, you all did an amazing job. I couldn't have done this work without all of you. The amount of time that all of you spent with me in preparing me, providing me with information, but also fighting so hard. And I always tell people that we can't dismantle the systems that exist, right? If there isn't somebody on the inside trying to dismantle those systems, but there are people on the outside pushing against those systems as well. And that it really takes all of us. And it has been my honor and my privilege to lift up all of your work and your voices. The fact that you all are so visionary in your thinking that housing stability is so much more than just having a home. It is that once you have a home, how do you protect those people? How do you get people into homes when they want to have homes? How do we ensure that prices remain affordable to people? That you all have such a broad agenda that it is so, so important, because at the center of everything we're trying to do, closing the gap on the achievement gap in school, closing the economic gap, closing the wealth gap, closing the health gaps, that at the center of all that is housing. Housing is at the intersection of all of those things. And so the fact that you all get it, and you all know that at the heart of what we need to do to close all of these other disparities is to ensure that people have safe and secure and stable housing. And I just can't tell you enough how much I appreciate all of you, and that we still have so much work to do. And so we just need to keep reaching out to other legislators to get them on board with us and continue to push our agenda, because that is the only way we're going to get this done. And so I'm sorry that I can't hang out with all of you and be here longer with you and talk more, but I want you to know that I will always be behind all of your work. I will always be fighting with you, and that your voices will always be lifted. As long as I'm here, we will always be lifting those voices up. And so thank you so much, and continue to keep fighting and moving forward, because we need you and we need your voices. Thank you so much for everything you all have done.
Thank you so much, Representative Herr, and a huge thank you to all of our legislative partners. We know that some folks who were planning to join us weren't able to because they were in conference committee doing the very important work that they are engaged with. And so thank you, Representative Herr, for joining us.
And for being the great champion that she is. Thank you. Always prepared, always ready to fight.
I see that we are at time just about, and so I am going to just one more time thank you all for joining us. Thanks to all of our presenters. Thanks to everyone who shared their stories. And a reminder that an action alert email will be going out. If you haven't filled out the action alert, there's another chance to do that. And it's also another opportunity for you to share that action alert with folks who are in your circle, in your organization. We need as many voices as possible raised in support. And then there will be a Twitter storm next week, and you will see on the screen the website where you can find us on social media, and then also our contacts for co-chairs. So on behalf of my co-chair, Chad Adams, and on behalf of all who are engaged with Homes for All on the various work teams and committees, thank you again so much for your participation in this rally.